Hello and welcome to episode 78 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, the Rivian EV pickup truck gets real. One weird trick will make your electric bike faster. France makes clean energy the law. All this and more on the weekly edition of the Clean Energy Show. Well, Brian, it's fall, and we're releasing our episodes a bit earlier in the week now because your schedule has changed. You're going back to teaching school. Are you back at work yet?
I am. I'm teaching classes in person at the university here with my film students, and it's good to be back. And provided it doesn't kill me, it's going to be great.
So it's a lot better teaching in person, right?
I don't care for the Zoom teaching. This is definitely preferable, but as you know, COVID is definitely not over. So, we're all just trying to stay safe and hopefully it works out.
There isn't a little part of you that is, I don't want to see people today. I got to see people. I got to comb my hair. I gotta, trim my nose hairs.
Well, I haven't gone shopping for clothes in about 2 years. Wardrobe didn't matter at all for the last year and a half, and I hadn't really gone shopping before that. So I think I probably look like a hobo to the students because my wardrobe's falling apart, but it is what it is.
And they're 2 years younger than they were last time. So anyway, I took my kid up to university 2.5 hours north of here, which was traumatic. But we came back to a horrible, horrible hailstorm that was blanketing the whole city we live in, Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. And we don't get hail very often here. And I didn't think we had damage. I had these big blotches in my Nissan Leaf that looked circular and then sort of went down as it, the hail sort of hit the dirt on my car and went down from there. Yeah. And I didn't think there was any damage until yesterday. A couple days later, my solar panels were spritzing water on the pool. The pool thermal solar panels where the water goes through various manifolds and little hoses.
Yeah.
Well, the hail was big enough to break some of the plastic manifold parts on there. And
oh, my.
Yeah, so that took some quick... Well, it's a good thing I caught it because, if the pool runs out of water, the system, it goes dry. Anyway, I got the pool steps out yesterday, too. We got out to a balmy 78.8 degrees Celsius, and my daughter, God bless her, went in. And we took out the steps, which was funny because I dropped them back in again once I got them out. These are these wedding cake plastic steps that cost hundreds of dollars. And you can't leave them in the winter because they freeze and you can't drain the pool entirely because that's the way it is with electric, with pools.
So we had a nice sunny day, so obviously that heated up the pool enough to go in. But that even with the damage to the panels?
Well, it just lost water. It didn't lose heat. It was spritzing warm water. So yeah, we did. I'm not used to getting heat in September because up here in Canada, the sun gets so low and the nights get so cold. Like sometimes we get almost frost this time of year, like 4 degrees Celsius. And we have frost advisories sometimes. So that really cools off the pool. And then in the daytime, the days are a bit shorter and the sun's at a lower angle. And even when it is warm, you don't get the same heating you do in the summertime. But I'm glad that that's taken care of. But yes, winter is here. Well, it's starting to be here. Well, anyway, I've got a new segment to debut this week, Brian. I'm very excited. It's something I've been thinking about a long time. It's called
Fantastic.
What James Learned.
We are willing to learn.
Now, I'm always learning things. I find it exciting to learn things.
Now, I could swear we've had this segment on the show before.
Yeah, but not with this intro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got two versions of the intro. One intro, my daughter says something.
We are willing to learn.
What James learned.
Can you name the quote from the movie that we are willing to learn?
No, I cannot.
It's from Stripes.
Oh, well, I mean, I haven't seen Stripes in about 35 years, so,
Yes.
I think that's okay.
They're registering for the Army, and the officer asks them if they're homosexuals when they're going through the questionnaire, and they say that being rebellious, they are willing to learn in order to agitate him. Anyway, I learned today the word agrivoltaics, and I've never heard that word before. Have you?
No, I have not.
Yeah. It's important, Brian, that if you had heard it, that you fake not hearing it, because otherwise it won't make me look very good. I've heard I've heard the word agrivoltaics for the first time today, and I think it's interesting. It's something we've talked about lots on the show. It's the putting of solar electric PV solar panels on farms and co-developing the same area of land for both solar and power. So sometimes it works for agriculture. They're doing it here where we live. They're working on one right now, about an hour south of us, that will actually include crops below it for sheep or goats or small four-legged animals of some sort, to chew on what grows below, and still, you're not taking up any land. You're not reducing any land from. So sometimes crops need partial sun, so you space them out. There's two different ways of doing this. By the way, the technique was originally conceived in 1981, where there was barely solar panels around. They were taking them off the White House in 1981 after. And by the way, I think those were thermal and not PV. Do you know anything about that?
Don't recall. I thought they were PV.
I thought they were PV too, but they might have had both. Because they did mention it for water heating, so they might have tried both. The word was coined in 2011, and I learned it 10 years later. But you should
on top of things as always.
You should still listen to our podcast, because we're not as dumb as it seems. It took me 10 years. I'm sure agrivoltaics is new to 90% or 95% of our listeners. So three basic kinds: solar arrays with space in between them for crops. Okay. Stilted, which means high up off the ground, so the sun still shines through on the crops. And greenhouse solar array, where you put you're growing agriculture, but on top you have solar arrays up there. So that's a new term, agrovoltaics. That's agrovoltaics. Brian Stockton, a new word. I'm so happy. And there's something else I learned this week. A German wind turbine manufacturer, Nordics, announced that it will offer a 6-megawatt onshore turbine. It's first. The new turbine will be designed for moderate and light wind regions. And that is the first time that I've learned that wind turbines are designed not just for onshore and offshore, but for light regions and moderate regions. So I guess they become more efficient. Anyway, this turbine is going to have 7% more energy yield, and this gets to the point of how things are getting better all the time. It's the same size of machine, but it's got 7% more yield because of this development. They changed the gearbox. It's going to last for 25 years and up to 35 years for certain sites that are perhaps lower wind. So that's, that investment lasts 35 years, which is a long time for one machine.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'm excited, Brian. I hope to learn something every week, but some weeks we probably won't have it. Now let's get to EV news. Rivian is in the news this week, Brian.
Yeah, so Rivian, of course, this is a startup electric vehicle manufacturer. They're going to make a pickup truck and an SUV, and they're going to make delivery vans for Amazon. And we've been waiting with bated breath for their vehicles to actually come out. They were supposed to come out this summer. They've now been delayed till the fall. And even though it's not the final exact production version, they got reviewed by Motor Trend. Motor Trend lent them a just slightly pre-production unit, and huge rave reviews from Motor Trend for this pickup truck. They say it's the best pickup truck they've ever driven. And then also the EPA range numbers came out for this vehicle. And this is kind of the mid-sized battery pack. And it's, I think, mixed results. It's 314 miles, which is around 500 kilometers.
505 I have, yeah.
Yeah. So not super efficient. This is a very heavy vehicle, and so it needs a lot of batteries to drive it. They're going to be probably a lower range version and then an upper range version. So this is the mid-tier. It's okay. I think slightly disappointing in terms of range, but it's just exciting that the Rivian truck is finally becoming real. We're getting so close. I can almost taste it.
And what would a Rivian truck taste like, Brian? Metallic. I don't know. It's exciting. I can't wait for it to get here. It's going to be the first electric pickup truck to market, followed probably by the Ford F-150. And then the Tesla Cybertruck eventually. But yeah, I am excited. I like this truck. It is a bit pricey. It's a bit luxurious. It's not really for your everyday person, but it is for your high-earning adventure person, which is you, basically. So you should go get one.
I guess. a high earning, but maybe not so adventurous. But yeah, of course, they're starting in the kind of upper end of the market, so not necessarily affordable. But hey, we got to start somewhere.
No, I love it, and I think that 500 kilometers. It depends on what sort of how fast they charge on the road, which is I think fairly quickly. We'll get to that again someday. We've covered it in the past, and we'll cover it again. But yeah, if you're towing something though, you probably want the larger battery pack. To get up, because basically if you're towing an electric vehicle, it's probably a third. So if you get up to maybe 600 kilometers range, you could drive for maybe a couple of hours at a time on the highway and then top up for 20 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, and of course, this is a lot of the talk about these electric pickup trucks that are just coming to market. How much range are you going to need? It's not even totally clear yet because they're not out in the marketplace. But the general feeling is you kind of need more range in an electric pickup truck because you are often, towing and wrecking your range. A working truck is not going to have the best efficiency.
Yeah, and they also carry loads. But again, this is an adventure vehicle, so your loads are either that $5,000 kitchen that pulls out of the tunnel, the gear tunnel, which I love. It's got induction heaters.
They've shown some really neat accessories.
Or kayaks, maybe an off-road vehicle of some sort, maybe an electric ATV, an electric Sea-Doo or something. But the Ford F-150s are going to be carrying cargo for contractors and actual work fleet vehicles. So that gets affected too. Not as much as a trailer, because a trailer you get into aerodynamics as well as weight. Anyway, VW is unveiling its new ID concept that previews a $24,000 electric car. Beating out Mr. Musk's $25,000 one, I guess. So Tesla and Volkswagen are currently competing to bring out the first affordable cars, at least non-Chinese versions, in the 25 to 30 price range. So if that's true, then where's the ID3 in North America, Brian? The ID3 is a highly, it's rear-wheel drive, it's a little hatchback. That's a hot hatch when you got rear-wheel drive. You could really go in that thing. I can't go on my Leaf because I spin rubber in the front wheel very easily and go sideways because it's got so much torque. But I often, I was at a light with a kid in a sports car, and I had to show him up yesterday. I literally left him in my dust. I mean, he was way behind my rearview mirror, and he was stunting before that. So now he knows electric is better.
But I always have mixed feelings about talking about like pre-production vehicles or concepts because it's still so far in the future. And, we've been talking about Rivian probably this whole podcast for the last year and a half, and the truck isn't actually out yet. So,
but it is coming. It is coming. They've got huge investment
coming.
Amazon's making $100,000 of their platform for delivery vehicles. They put tons of money in. Ford's put money in. Lots of other investments, and they're going to be on the stock market, aren't they? Didn't I hear that this week?
Yeah, I can't remember the details.
Okay, we'll get to that again, but yeah, investment advice. Rivian looks good. Depends how high it starts, but yeah, it always shoots up really high, then goes down the next day when something gets offered in the new tech world.
Oh yes, that's right. It's only rumors at this point, but yeah, they're trying to do an IPO, and so the rumored valuation is quite high. So, maybe wait a bit and see if it drops. And this is not investment advice.
Okay. So we'll have more on the Mercedes new SUV that's been, some details have been announced in our EV of the Week segment coming up. Let's get into some Tesla news. Brian Stockton, you know what? They are aiming to release that $25,000 car in 2023. Likely will not have a steering wheel or pedals. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's still early days. I think Elon Musk even said at one point that the Model 3 might not have a steering wheel. And of course, he was overly optimistic about that. So He is often overly optimistic about these deadlines for full self-driving. And I would certainly prefer a steering wheel. Like, I think we all know, like, autonomous vehicles are coming and that is the future. But if we could ever actually lay our hands on a $25,000 Tesla, I would totally put down a deposit and be one of the people to buy that.
God.
And it would be nice to be able to actually drive it with a steering wheel on occasion.
Yes. Here's what I don't get, Brian. The car is $25,000. Full self-driving is currently $10,000. which is half the price of the car on top of that as an option. Is the steering wheel an option?
So really then it's probably a $35,000 car if they do remove the steering wheel, unless they've got some other scheme up their sleeve that they can actually sell it all for 25. Just like that other stuff, the Volkswagen concept vehicle, it's still very early to be talking about this kind of stuff. I do expect maybe an unveil in the next year or so for the cheaper Tesla car. So we'll just have to wait and see.
A lot of people will say, hey, 2023, that's a year and a half from now, not going to happen. However, they're going to be building them in the Chinese factory, right, in Shanghai. This seems possible to me. The timeline seems actually possible. And I'm not being crazy here. I think that they might actually meet that timeline, especially since rumors are that they're already getting going on it.
And they've talked about maybe a version in Europe, so they might do a slightly different version in the Berlin factory. But yeah, they're so close to opening those two gigantic factories in Texas and Berlin. So, in the next year, they should at least double their capacity for making vehicles. So yes, it's possible, although like a new vehicle program always takes longer. They've announced some more delays for the Cybertruck, not really starting until 2023 in earnest for that, because it's a whole new platform, whole new vehicle. They're moving really, really fast to grow the company as fast as possible. But, they're really at the limit. It's going to be hard for them to go any faster than they're going.
Yeah. So Germany may subsidize Tesla. How will they do that?
Germany is interested in, accelerating the transition to sustainable energy. So they have these programs to subsidize certain businesses, including making batteries. So it is possible that they could get a grant from the German government for $1.35 billion US.
Holy mother of God. That's a lot of money.
But it's, it's a bit like we always complain about the fossil fuel industry getting subsidies that they really don't need.
Right.
And really, Tesla probably doesn't need this. Like, they've decided that this is a viable business to go after. So they're going after it for business reasons, not for the environment. So, they probably don't need the subsidy. There's still that EV tax credit bubbling up in the U.S. that could take another $10,000 off of Tesla's electric vehicles, which they're already making and already selling at a profit. Yeah. So I question the wisdom of it. Once again, I say this all the time, just remove the fossil fuel subsidies and then we'll be good.
Yeah. Equal the playing field and you don't have to give any subsidies. Think about that. But if you're going to give fossil fuel subsidies, then you got to throw billions at the transition as well. So Tesla is now offering a different kind of battery in North America. Do you want to explain that one?
Yeah. So the waiting list for Tesla vehicles in North America is quite long, but they sent out an email to people who had reserved the Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus, which is the car that I own that I got a year and a half ago. And they have announced that, hey, if you want to get your vehicle a little earlier than we had scheduled, we can switch you to these LFP or the iron battery packs. So the details weren't totally spelled out, but what it sounds like is that they're building these iron-based batteries at the China factory, and then they're shipping the battery packs to Fremont, California, to the factory there, so that they can get more cars made. So previously, the Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus, it's a 50 kilowatt hour pack with a kind of a nickel-based battery, which is a more expensive battery. Iron batteries are something Tesla's into in a big way because they're a lot cheaper. They're maybe a bit heavier and maybe not quite as good in some performance things. So if you do opt for this new iron pack on your reserved Tesla, you'll get, like something like 6-10 kilometers less range. But the interesting thing about the iron-based battery packs is you can charge them to 100% every day.
Really?
Which they don't recommend. Yeah, for my car and for the nickel-based batteries, they recommend you just charge to 90% every day. And then you only go to 100 if you're on a road trip or something. So you get a little bit less range, but because you can charge it to 100% every day, it kind of means less. So yeah, I would probably not hesitate to opt for one of these battery packs.
Yeah, for you newbies out there, electric cars seem weird, and there's some things that are different. And one is that you generally charge your car to 80%, or in some cases 90%, whatever your manufacturer stipulates. But and then you go on a road trip, you charge it to 100%. And You just don't leave it around at 100% because that stresses the battery. And usually 80% is, you're not worried about that. It's not like you have range anxiety. It's still plenty of range for the city and then some, and because you're plugging in every night doesn't make a difference, right? Not everybody plugs in every night, but you certainly can if you need to. So yeah, this would be for the middle range and shorter range versions of vehicles, right? Not for because it takes up too much room and you can't get the same energy out of the same density. So
yeah. They're a little bit bigger. They're a little bit heavier. So it's in some ways not ideal, but they have this, like they're just trying to ramp up production as fast as possible. So they're using all these different battery packs, getting them from as many different sources as they can. And, as long as they've tested the batteries and they seem to work fine, which seems true, then I think it's great.
So Tesla does seem like it has, a problem here with battery supply. The demand is outstripping the supply, and that the other car companies won't talk about it, but they're constrained too. I hope this gets ironed out. I mean, there's so much money going into factories. They're building one weekly, a gigafactory somewhere in the world weekly or more. So I hope that the supply chain, the supply and demand gets worked out, that the investment is going to be so huge that not only will we have enough supply eventually in 5 or 6 years, but that the price will come down as well.
Yeah, it's just a matter of all hands on deck, ramp up battery supply as fast as possible, because batteries are the new oil.
Did you, by the way, Brian, read the Douglas Copeland column in the UK paper?
Oh, yeah, that was a bit odd. Yeah, so I'm an old-time Douglas Copeland fan. He wrote that novel, Generation X, that is a novel that describes you and me, basically, our generation of people born in the early 60s. I made a film called My Dinner with Generation X. We asked Douglas Copeland to be in an interview in the film, and he said no. He's got better things to do. But yeah, he wrote a weird article this week for The Guardian called In Defense of Elon Musk. And I guess he just sort of had enough of people stomping all over him. And but I don't know, it's not his best work. It seems kind of written a little bit haphazardly. And it's not so much of an argument to explain why people should maybe not hate Elon Musk so much. Just kind of an opinion piece with a few jokes thrown in there. But still, just kind of interesting because the it's in The Guardian, and, the mainstream press is never particularly kind to Musk. It always seems to go badly for him in the media. And so, I don't know, a nice change of pace, I guess.
On the one hand, he invites it because he does weird things. On the other hand, people are just looking for negative. And we know negative sells. It's obvious on our YouTube videos. Anything we talk about something negative, boom, thousands and thousands of views.
Shut up, James.
You shut up. By the way, TikTok. We're on TikTok now. I can't stress that enough. Putting clips on TikTok. And I don't understand it.
So your strategy here is to promote the podcast and become famous on TikTok, promoting the podcast by inspiring people to hate us, because that seems to be what's happening.
Well, we'll see. I don't care. There's no such thing as bad press. We were trying to expand the podcast audience. So we go on TikTok, and I stick my toes in the waters of that cesspool that is TikTok. And there's a lot of people with very strange opinions on there. Even worse than YouTube, I would say. My daughter, though, who's 13, is on there setting people straight and educating them, which I appreciate.
Nice.
So Tesla started a construction on a supercharger in a city that you were born, Brian Stockton.
A city very near and dear to my heart, North Battleford, Saskatchewan, where I was born way back in the early 1960s, as we just discussed. And yeah, I don't know. I who would have thought all these years ago that someday there'd be electric car chargers in the northern wilds of Saskatchewan in North Battleford. So I think that's kind of fun.
Is there any reason for you to go there anymore? Do you have relatives, any connection to the city?
No connection whatsoever, but we do drive through it if we're ever driving to Edmonton. So that's what they're finishing here, is the Saskatoon to Edmonton route, kind of the northern prairie route. So that seems like it'll be probably finished in a few months, and we'll be able to drive electric to Edmonton, which is great.
And possibly Jasper National Park, one of our most beautiful and arguably most beautiful national parks in Canada. As far as one that's accessible is concerned and not way to hell up north. Elon Musk says Tesla is worth $3,000 a share if they execute really well. I was curious what you think about that. Because, ARK Invest is saying one thing and people are sort of pushing back on them now. How do you feel about that as a Tesla investor yourself?
Well, as a Tesla shareholder, it's fantastic to hear because I hope it's worth $3,000 a share in a few years. Well, you just have to keep looking at the growth plans that they've outlined. And one of ARK's main arguments is that, when they do these price targets, they look at what, Tesla's share of the EV market is going to be. And when they last did some targets in like 2017, 2018, they kind of predicted that Tesla's market share in EVs would probably be down by 2021 because the competition, Ford, GM, all these other players are getting into the game. But what in fact has happened is Tesla's market share in EVs has gone up since 2017. So that just gives them more confidence that, eventually competition will come, but that is clearly not the case right now. And so, I think, 3,000 a share in a few years, 2024, 25 is absolutely possible, which would be like 3 times from where it is now, around $700.
I gotta invest. I gotta take all my money, Elon. That's interesting. I mean, even if it falls short, it's still pretty darn sweet, right? So that's good.
Yeah.
Also,
I'd be happy with half that, but sure.
Here's my concerns. As far as putting all my eggs in one basket and being a Tesla investor, Ford's going to be out with their truck, fairly reasonably priced. And people are going to see what advantages there are to pickup trucks, right? It's going to be massive advantage.
Electric pickup trucks.
Even more than the car segment, because there's more you can do with pickup trucks that'll, for one thing, they're going to be damn fast. You're going to have a sports car and a pickup truck. You buy a pickup truck, get a free sports car, I say. And that's what, the Tesla Cybertruck's as fast as a Porsche 911, they say, off the line. So you buy a Cybertruck, get a free Porsche 911, I say. My question is, though, if those permeate the streets, the F-150 electrics, Lightning, both for, fleets, which will be the big purchaser, and people in general, which is the number one segment in North America, will people go for the Cybertruck and its odd looks? We don't know. That's a question mark right now.
Yeah, I guess nobody knows for sure, but there is over 1 million pre-orders for the Cybertruck. And as we discussed last week or the week before, the numbers that they're targeting to produce the electric Ford F-150 are kind of minuscule compared to the Cybertruck. So maybe people will want to buy the electric F-150. It won't be available because they're only going to make something like 80,000 by 2024. Tesla could be making, 500,000 or 1 million of them by then. So, the competition's got to speed things up.
Right. Did you see that full self-driving beta hack in Europe? Was it Europe?
No.
Somebody hacked it and used it on the streets where it wasn't authorized. Remember, he said they couldn't do it in Canada because the streets were slightly different. I don't even know how the streets are slightly different here. It's beyond me, and I'm a Canadian who goes to America. So they must be really nuanced. But I imagine Eastern European streets are really quite different there. But he apparently it managed okay and did some things and wasn't completely useless. So and it was also an older version of the software. So they're going to try and hack the new version of the software and see where it goes from there. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's it for Tesla news this week.
Ryan's Movie Corner.
All right, so the worlds of electric vehicles and artificial intelligence have been merging for a while now. As we often say on the show, it isn't just about transitioning to electric vehicles, but the self-driving part of it is going to be a huge part of the solution to revamp the transportation system. And so if cars can drive themselves and we have robo-taxis, this could potentially lead to a huge positive change in how we do transportation around the world. So, and of course, Tesla had their AI day recently, and there's other companies like Waymo that are working on self-driving cars. So, yeah, I just thought since everyone's been talking about artificial intelligence, these days that it might be time to revisit this film from 2001 called AI, Artificial Intelligence, originally conceived by Stanley Kubrick. He passed away, and then Steven Spielberg took it over, and he directed the film. So let's start with a clip.
Those were the years after the ice caps had melted because of the greenhouse gases. And the oceans had risen to drown so many cities along all the shorelines of the world. Millions of people were displaced. Climate became chaotic. Hundreds of millions of people starved in poorer countries. Elsewhere, a high degree of prosperity survived when most governments in the developed world introduced legal sanctions to strictly licensed pregnancies, which was why robots, who were never hungry and who did not consume resources beyond those of their first manufacture, were so essential an economic link in the chainmail of society.
So, James, have you seen this film?
I have, and I saw it before I had kids, and a friend of mine had already just had kids, and he told me that it was devastating to watch because it's this little kid who's sort of left alone. Well, it's not a real kid, but he thinks he's real. So
a robot. Does
that make him not real? I don't know. That's kind of the question of the film, because he has full consciousness just because his body's not real.
But have you seen the film recently?
Thought it's on my list, Brian. It's on my list of things to get back to. So go ahead. Okay,
well, here's the hot tip. Do not bother.
Okay.
It doesn't hold up at all. And I remember watching it way back in 2001, and I thought it was pretty good. And if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 74% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty good. But it does not hold up. And that clip that we played illustrates part of the problem. On the one hand, I thought it was cool that's the very first lines of the film. And it's cool because it's talking about climate change and sea levels rising and stuff. And this is back in 2001, not as hot a topic as it is now. And so it seems like, maybe this film's going to be kind of smart. But then he just keeps talking and talking, and it's so much exposition. And so, the first 20 minutes of the movie just feels like exposition. The project was conceived originally by Stanley Kubrick, and he worked on it for something like 10 years. It's based on a short story by a guy named Brian Aldiss. And so Kubrick worked on this film for 10 years, which is kind of how he worked. This is the guy who directed 2001: A Space Odyssey and The Shining and Full Metal Jacket, and very meticulous filmmaker who would take, 10 years to make a movie. But I don't know. And then he passed away, and I feel like he didn't crack it before he died. So Spielberg actually wrote the screenplay, which is weird because he's not known for writing screenplays. He's a director. Mm-hmm. So it just feels like there's just way too much exposition. It plays a little bit like a horror film, which is kind of cool. So there's this robot child that goes to this family, and that's kind of spooky and creepy. But it's not really a horror film, and it's not really much of a science fiction film either, because they don't get the details of AI right in any way at all. Like this little child it's a one-off creation, and they send it into the home of somebody who works for the company. And the idea is that you imprint it on the mother, and the mother becomes the mother of it. And this is a family that had lost a child, and so on and so forth. But like one of the plot points is, well, once you imprint on the mother, it can't be erased. It can't be taken back, which doesn't make any sense at all. It's a robot. Just wipe the memory. But the whole plot of the movie hinges on that one detail. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
And it's long and meandering. It's 2.5 hours long. Did not care for
There was one aspect at the end of the film where millennia passed. I was always fascinated
2,000
by that.
years.
The ideas sort of, expanded my brain until it almost popped. And I was kind of always fascinated by that. Some of them went over my head, though.
Well, and that's an interesting idea. And it harkens back to 2001: A Space Odyssey, because that takes place over actually millions of years. So Kubrick seems to be trying to do the same thing, like this really expansive, epic kind of story. But, I just don't buy it. And it's wild because 2001: A Space Odyssey came out in 1967. It's a very famous AI film because HAL the computer is an artificial intelligence, but it was handled way better back in 1967, which is weird. But one of the key things about 2001: A Space Odyssey, Kubrick wrote that with Arthur C. Clarke, the famous science fiction author, and the two of them kind of conceived it together and wrote it and stuff. And Kubrick famously in the editing got rid of all the voiceover, like Arthur C. Clarke had written all this explanatory voiceover that explained everything. But in this film, in AI, it's just all the explanatory stuff is all in there. So I feel like if Kubrick had lived, he might have figured out a way to crack it and get some of that exposition out of there and make it more cinematic.
Maybe we can revive Kubrick and have the Kubrick cut. Maybe he offloaded his brain into a chip somewhere, and we can do that.
Yeah. Well, one of the plots in AI is they take a lock of hair from the robot boy's mother, and they end up cloning her toward the end of the movie. Spoilers, I apologize. But
that was another great addition to Brian's Movie Corner. Let's talk about some e-bikes here, Mr. Stockton, if you don't mind. I insist on an update on what's going on with your broken e-bike. It lasted like a week or two and broke, and you've been working on it. It came off mail order, if you will, the modern mail order we call the internet.
Yeah, well, thank you for dropping off the soldering iron, but I have been too lazy to fix it. I'm busy teaching my classes, so...
Another lazy update from Brian Stockton. Damn you, Brian. Fix it, for God's sake. It's another season. How many seasons do you have left in your autumn years here? Come on. There's only so many seasons to ride around in your e-bike.
I will get on that soon.
Okay, so what is this hack that is been announced, a product that hacks e-bikes?
Yeah, so this story was on Electrek a couple of days ago. This little e-bike hack can make your electric bike 50% faster instantly. And I know that you did something similar with your electric bike where you can... you did something to mess with the speedometer, I think.
I set the wheel size to something small, so it basically thinks it has a small wheel. Therefore, it thinks it's going slower than it is.
Yeah, so this is a device that you can buy that does something similar that kind of changes the gear ratio of the sensor that senses how fast you're going. And it kind of tricks your bike into thinking that it's going slower than it is. And so, electric bikes have these certain speed limits, particularly in the EU. It's limited to, 25 kilometers an hour. And so, yeah, you can buy this device and put it on your bike and, trick your bike into using more energy and going faster than it was originally made for. And it's $114 US to buy.
Oh, that's pricey for a magnet thing. I didn't know it was that much. Ouch. Nay, I say nay. Nay.
And once I get my e-bike fixed, I am going to try and hack that too, because there are videos on the internet where you press the buttons in a certain way, and I think I can get mine to go faster without having to buy this device.
If you are interested, the device is called Speedy with an I at the end. So you can turn a 15 mile per hour bike into a 23 mile per hour bike. Mine goes 32 kilometers, which is the 25 mile per hour deal, I think. And that's fast enough. I hit my head last summer. Still not quite right, that head of mine.
Oh, clearly.
I don't want to go too fast. Of course, I'm an old man, an awkward old man. Speaking of which, though, I have to tell you about this. BMW has introduced an e-bike with a 300 kilometer range in low power mode, but still, mine arguably could go 100 kilometers, they say, with a light person on perfect conditions on a flat surface in low power mode. This is 3 times that. The iVision Ambi is a high-speed electric bicycle with belt drive. It has 2,000 watt hours, and that's 186 miles of range, by the way, for those of you in the United States and England. And using an app, riders can choose between the European legal limit of 25 kilometers an hour, or 50 miles per hour, and, change whatever speed limit you want, including very, very fast speed limits. Over 60 kilometers an hour. It's just, these are turning, there's a line here that's blurring between motorcycles, or electric motorcycles and electric e-bikes, and it's getting blurred now because they're becoming so powerful. Batteries are getting better. Miku Toll on electric says, don't get too excited though. You'll need to register the bike and get a special license plate to use it on public roads, if in anything other than the slowest mode, especially in Europe. Well, are people going to do that? Are they just going to go fast? You can even geofence it. You could geofence it for the city to go slow, and it opens up on the highway because of the app. So that's...
Oh, fantastic. Well, That's exciting. And so 2,000 watt hours, so that's a 2 kilowatt hour battery, I guess. That's huge.
Yes, pretty huge when you think about it. It's like a 12th of my first generation Nissan Leaf battery, which is, it's a car, not a bicycle. A car, a big, heavy car. So, yeah, I don't know. It's time. Brian, we got to get into our feedback before we run out of time here. Don tweeted us. He says the analysis of the benchmark of big oil on their benchmarking of methane emissions shows a significant gap. In other words, they've been lying. The bastards have been lying and putting more methane into the earth. Because methane is shorter lived in the atmosphere, it has taken a backseat to CO2, but it's still a problem. And the UN Environment Program reported that cutting methane emissions by half this decade could stave off 0.3 degrees of warming by the 2040s, which is incredibly significant, incredibly important.
Yeah, methane emissions are out of control and underreported. It's sad news, and I'm concerned for your blood pressure.
Okay, a couple of weeks ago, I asked the listeners to tell us anything, to give us some feedback, because we love feedback. And I'm going to give you how to give us feedback right now. It's cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. On Twitter or TikTok, our handle is cleanenergypod, or leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. Yes, we are on TikTok, Clean Energy Pod. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Clean Energy Pod. But I asked our listeners last week to tell us what they had for breakfast. And Paul told us information, and I said, he said he had toast, and I said that's not enough information. So I came back and said,
enough.
Red currant jam on toast. Well, he's updated us further about that breakfast from 2 weeks ago. He says the red currant jam was homemade by our neighbors who picked the berries from their currant bushes. Amazing. I'm assuming Paul shops at Whole Foods. The bread was Rudolph's Thomas brought rye bread. Of course it was. Of course it was, you stupid health nut, Paul. Toasted in a red Betty Crocker toaster. Oh, red. Interesting. The apple juice was Kiji organic. Of course it was organic. And Paul, I don't know that you can give us any more information. I think I'm going to stop asking for information now. That is a thorough covering of your breakfast. Thank you.
That's a lot.
And if you want to tell us what you had for breakfast, be sure to drop us a line. Coming up is the lightning round, where we'll speed through the headlines. And Brian, I've got a brand new segment for you called The March Forward.
The advance continues.
Yes, the March Forward is where we talk about different benchmarks of what's going on in the world and how we are going to get to 2030 with a clean energy world. Denmark is set to reach 100% renewables by 2030. Right now, their power generation is doing actually really high at 86.4% of 2020, but it's set to grow to 99.9% in 2030. Congratulations, Denmark.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I also wanted to talk about a story from France where they have a new climate bill that says 30% of the surface of new commercial and industrial buildings will have to be solarized starting on January 1st, 2023, a year and a half from now. This is an article from Clean Technica. And there's other stipulations. Parking areas that are bigger than 500 square meters will have to have at least 50% of their surface area, and carports as well. So actually putting some meat onto these target goals, which we like to see.
I'm happy to hear that. That's really advanced to think that if you build a parking lot, you can't just build a parking lot, because it pisses me off when there was a new Costco open here a couple of years ago, and I was looking for the EV chargers. I mean, come on, Costco, you're an advanced company. You're not IKEA, but you're advanced. You can throw up a couple of EV chargers. Who's going to build a new store? It is the future. The future is here, Costco, and everyone else. Thank you. Germany, the world's fourth largest auto market, saw plug-in electric vehicle sales jump to a record of 27.6% in August. That's a 2 times growth in share year over year. Non-electrified combustion vehicles, the share fell to a record low 53.2%. Diesel's down to 17.7%. And the overall market was down 38%, as we know. And by the way, I keep talking about my Toyota dealership because I passed by it and we bought 2 cars there, new. how they don't have any cars. And I told you that there's usually like 3 or 4 rows of them. There's only 1 row. Well, guess what? Now the 1 row they have, they're spacing them out between the cars to make them look bigger.
Wow. So is this part of the chip shortage?
I assume it's the chip shortage. In fact, Toyota had said that they shut down at least one of their plants in Japan because of the chip shortage. So, and who knew that it was going to affect stock in Canada that quickly? But I feel sorry for that company. They also own an Audi dealership, and they are the same people who put the first electric vehicle ad I've ever heard on local radio for the Audi e-tron. So that's nice, or just the fact that they have Audis now electric. Solar panels, rooftop solar panels are almost 30% of Australian homes. They've been 25% for a few years now, and they could meet 77% of the total grid demand by 2025. That's amazing. I can't believe I just read that. As citizens they're tiring of coal and gas power's unreliability and high prices. Different situation down there, obviously. And I sort of been changing my mind on subsidizing rooftop solar because it's not the most efficient way to clean up a grid, but doesn't take up any land, and people are gung-ho to do it. It seems to be a proven concept in Australia. If you're at 30% and growing, that's amazing that I could do 77 on rooftops.
Yeah, that's more than I would have thought. So, you're going to have to reverse your position, I think. And
a different climate there, too, than what we have. I mean, I'm assuming their sunshine hours are longer and no snow cover or anything like that to factor in. And maybe less forest fires, we'll see. In the ongoing Canadian election campaign that we have here now in Canada, the Liberals are now promising a ZEV mandate of 50% all passenger vehicles by 2030, and they've previously been somewhat reluctant to make this promise, because the auto industry is lobbying against it, and I'll be damned if the oil industry isn't lobbying against it too. We haven't heard about that, but it's backroom stuff. The Conservative Party, which is the other party that is likely to get into power, they're leading in the polls right now. So it's either the Liberals or the Conservatives in Canada, even though we have multiple parties here, including a fairly large NDP left-wing party. The Conservatives are actually promising 30% by that date, but no one believes them. I don't. Do you put any hope in that? I mean, it's hard enough to believe the Liberals.
Every election campaign, I tend to distrust everything that everybody says. Mm-hmm, so, but it's just interesting that they are actually trying that. They clearly have done their research, and people are obviously interested in that, or they wouldn't be pushing it.
All right, very quickly, here's the EV of the week. The Mercedes-AMG EQS luxury sedan has been announced and shown off, and specs are out. Capable of adding 186 miles or 300 kilometers of range in 15 minutes. Brian, that's really good. I mean, damn good, if true.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So that must mean they have some efficiency going for them. And, that's more than you could ask for. If you drive for, 2.5 hours on the highway or 2.25 hours and spend only 15 minutes on your break charging up, which you would, assumably the range is longer than that. You wouldn't have to always do that. Amazing. So the full range and pricing may not be fully, well, they're starting to tease it, I guess, but it's not official yet. Let's put it that way. So,
and it's a 108 kilowatt hour battery pack, apparently, which is quite large.
As big as they come. So, yeah, that's a huge pack, and 649 horsepower, 700 pound-feet of torque, a race mode with a boost function that briefly increases the maximum input of the horsepower quite a bit, actually, by 100, and the torque by 50. 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. That's not Tesla fast, not Plaid fast, not Roadster fast, but pretty faster than, as we've said a million times, faster than my pretty little brain can handle, literally, because I would pass out, or your uncle would lose his vision for a while.
Yeah.
So we talked about last week.
This is exciting.
Yeah, so there you have it. But now it's time for the Clean Energy Show lightning round. Hyundai Motor Corp has shared its goal to become completely carbon neutral by 2045 there. It is included in this global product lineup, all company operations in that. So that's interesting. 2045 is a bit ways off. Not as ambitious maybe as possible.
Well, and we're eagerly anticipating the Hyundai Ioniq 5, their latest fully electric vehicle, which, again, coming soon, like I guess everything else that we seem to talk about.
You know, Brian, that is a sweet car, and is probably one of them that I would select, although it goes up against the Model Y in price fairly evenly, so that's a tough one, but it's a very compelling car.
We'll have to see the price.
If you're in California, you're sick of Teslas, you don't want to drive another Tesla because everybody else is driving one, that's a really interesting option. I love the seats. Hyundai announced an end to all combustion engines in Europe beginning in 2035. Not terribly soon, but I would think 2030 you got to start announcing something like that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. It's everyone's going to have to speed up their estimates.
Hyundai's luxury brand Genesis recently shared plans to go all electric by 2030. That makes sense. Luxury, okay. Ending new combustion vehicles in 2025 also makes sense. That's on target.
That's more like it.
Okay. Nissan and Waseda University in Tokyo have been working together since 2017, and today they announced that they are starting the testing of a recycling process that recovers high-purity, rare earth compounds from electric vehicle motor magnets. And this, Brian Stockton, is something we rarely talk about, is the actual recycling of the components on electric vehicles that do have rare earth minerals in them, as well as the batteries. We're always talking about the batteries, but there's other things, too, in those electric motors that'll be in the millions one day soon.
Yeah, no, there's obviously, valuable components that have to go into those electric motors. So that's great.
Shell is to install 50,000 EV chargers in the UK by 2025. I'm curious what you think about this. Are you cynical about that?
Well, anything to do with an old school fossil fuel company, I think it probably makes sense to be cynical, but hey, more chargers, the better. They're going to have to reinvent their gas stations, so it seems like it's a way to hedge their bets on the future, and maybe they won't have to close all their gas stations if they put chargers in as well.
Well, Brian, that's our time. I got to cut the lightning round short. Our fall season is upon us. The Clean Energy Show is alive and well in 2021. Starting earlier in the week, so we hope to see you there. Don't forget to rate and review our podcast on iTunes and anywhere else you see rating and reviewing for our show. We thank you for listening. Please get a hold of us. We'd like to know what you're thinking, anything at all, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.